Bang Suknam La Jangjo Badu Dak Ni Kyap Suchi Dakji Jin Sugi Pe Sonam Ki Drola Pan Chiesang Ye Drupa Shoke Pe. The Buddha, the Dharma, the Supreme Sangha. Until enlightenment, we take refuge in you. May we, through the merit of generosity and so on, achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Pei. Welcome to Tridevi Chamunda Mandir in Denver, Colorado. This is Yamajit. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the 38th installment of our Tibetan Book of the Dead series. And actually, we are through the book itself. There's an addendum in the back of the translation that I've been reading from on Buddhist basics. And I think it's a real nice introduction to the philosophy behind this scripture. So I'm going to be sharing that with you this evening. So the goal of life, as well as the afterlife, is to be liberated from imperfections of our current existence. Earth life is seen as a recurring pattern of trying to strive for pleasure and avoid pain. When pleasure is achieved, its effect is short-lived. We tire of it. We feel tension and then search again for another source of pleasure. Perfection can be achieved by breaking this cycle. We will continue to be reborn until we want to and succeed in breaking the cycle. Buddhism teaches how to break this cycle. The student learns to recognize this cycle in our everyday life. This is the development of self-knowledge. For example, a child who puts a finger on a hot stove and feels pain no longer does that behavior. But this is only awareness of how to avoid pain. We must go deeper. At a more subtle level, one who recognizes that they are constantly seeking the approval of others will eventually stop that attachment-based behavior cycle. By exploring our attachments, we can eventually be free of them. Meditation is one of the tools to examine more and more subtle levels of this self-defeating cycle. By quietly looking at oneself, one learns to observe one's own actions and thoughts, objectively like a scientist viewing an amoeba through a microscope. When the scientist views the amoeba, he or she takes care to strictly observe and note the characteristics and dependent relations. The scientist does not make value judgments on whether they like or dislike the amoeba. Likewise, the meditator learns to view their behavior and thoughts objectively. This is the ability to see things with equanimity. So, for example, objectively, without the colored eyeglasses of value judgment and attachment. Only by being objective can we see the results of our actions and thoughts and personal inertia that these have caused. Only with this objectivity, equanimity, can we see the subtler and subtler levels of the cycle. Key elements that are learned by this type of self-exploration include discovering that any time we try to cling to a pleasure moment, we try to make that moment last longer. It disappears, no longer being a source of pleasure. And this is the doctrine of change. We try to cling to thoughts, to images, to define ourselves if this self is real and unchanging. This self is really a set of ideas that constantly change. This is the doctrine of the non-permanent self. We cling to ideas that seem correct and everlasting. An example is a child's idea of his parents. As perceptions change as we age, etc., we realize those ideas are not valid. Beliefs, even cherished beliefs of those who we are or what we believe, have no permanence. This is the doctrine of delusion. According to the Tibetan view of the afterlife, these skills regarding the true nature of reality are to be worked on during earth life and continue to be used and developed during the special trials or ambushes of the afterlife perfection or liberation. Though rarely achieved, we can achieve at any time. Until this is achieved, we continue to wander, pushed and pushed within the cycle. The traditional introduction to Buddhist thinking sums up this discussion in the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. The first of the Noble Truths: life is imperfect, unsatisfactory, filled with suffering, also known as dukkha. According to this doctrine, even pleasure is suffering because in the end we know the party's going to have to end. Imperfection is caused by clinging, attachments, desires, addictions. The third, imperfection can be overcome. And the fourth, the way to overcome imperfection, that is, suffering, is by following the Eightfold Path: right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These are some bare Buddhist basics. There are many texts that will amplify this discussion, and you're encouraged to explore them. And the author mentions a couple of books. One popular book is What the Buddha Taught by Walpole Rahula. The other, The Heart of Buddhist Meditation by Nyingponika Thera. The basic concepts, however, are only learned through practice, and by using the basic concepts and looking for them within the workings of your daily life. This is done through contemplation of yourself throughout the day, as well as doing formal meditations. Eventually, it becomes part of one's every moment. You learn to see these key factors in your daily life in yourself. It takes time and effort, hence the Buddhist bottom line: work out your salvation with diligence. In this view, it is your most important task. In the Tibetan view, these skills are developed and used in this life as well as in the afterlife. And as mentioned before, doing this sadhana will prepare oneself when the time comes. I'd like to add a little bit, just some personal thoughts around this. So we have the idea that all of life is suffering. Suffering is caused by desire, especially the stresses of unfulfilled desires. So the way to get rid of suffering is to get rid of desire. And there we have the Eightfold Path. The thing is, I personally think it's impossible for we as humans in these bodies to be totally free of desire. And, we get hungry, we get thirsty, seeking food, seeking water are certainly good things. And even the desire for enlightenment or the desire for liberation, those are still desires. But through these workings, through these sadhanas, through these meditations, we can examine our desires and we can determine what are the necessary ones, what is truly important to us, what is truly meaningful to us, and what is just meaningless fluff that's ready to be cast away. And that certainly is one of the effects of doing this work, is things that maybe were once important to you no longer have that importance, and you're ready to let go of them. In the past, I've said to students, and this is before this particular person ever entered politics, you want to be Donald Trump? Well, you certainly can be my guest. You might have some obstacles to overcome. You have a father who can loan you $1 million to begin building your empire. But if you succeed, don't expect to have a normal marriage, home, or family life. If those things are truly important to you, then maybe you need to rethink your ambitions. And so I think that's really the great challenge we have in this life, is realizing what's truly important, realizing what's truly meaningful, realizing what our true mission is in this life, our dharma, what we have taken birth for in this time, and to work accordingly. So, Om Ahom, Om Ahom, Om Ahom Pe. I want to thank you for joining me. That includes Kim and Bryce, who are tuned in live right now, and anybody else who will be watching the recording of this broadcast. There's one more installment of this series where I'm going to shift to the Hindu point of view, which really parallels what we've been discussing these last 38 days. So I'm going to do a short meditation tomorrow, 7 p.m., based on readings from the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verses 11 through 31. And this is a passage that is frequently read at Hindu funerals, especially at the moment when the cremation fire is being lit. So I hope that you can join me for that. For those who are joining live right now, this is the 5th of March, 2024. And I'm going to sign off for a few minutes, move the camera, and then I'm going to come back on a new program. And I'm going to share with you our Tuesday satsang program. And this will be a meditation based on a short scripture, the Navadurga Stotram, or the Stotram, that is the hymn to the 9 Durgas. So I'm going to sign off now, and thank you, and see you in a few minutes. Namaste. Blessings always. Thank you again. Jai Mata Di. Jai Mata Di. Jai Mata Di. Jai Ma.